Hey, what's up guys, Jaeky here. Today we're going to be going over some basics on how to play Deadlock as well as some tips and tricks to utilize Deadlock to her maximum potential. So Deadlock definitely is not as meta as other Sentinels like Cypher or Killjoy. If you're learning the Sentinel role, I would recommend learning those two agents first. But if you want to explore a little bit into Deadlock, she can be very strong, especially on maps like this. Bind, Deadlock is really strong on this map in my opinion. So yeah, let's go over how to play her. Let's first go over her basic abilities. If you're already familiar with her abilities, you can skip this part of the video. But starting off, you have Barrier Mesh, which is her wall. This does cost 400 credits. It used to be her free ability, but they switched it over to cost money. It's 400 credits, and you can basically think of this as a Sage Wall. So when you throw it down, once it lands, the center disc will generate barriers from the origin point right here, and then it will split out into different points, 4 different points right here. The center point has the most HP, and then the outer orbs have less HP. And just like a Sage Wall, it's easier to break before it's fully formed. So as you can see right there, it made that sound effect and filled up. That's how you know the wall is fully formed. If you start shooting any of the points before it fully forms, it's easier to break because the HP kind of slowly builds up like a Sage Wall. And then once the wall is down, it will last a total of 30 seconds into the round before it completely fades away. Next up is Deadlock's Sonic Sensors. This is a pretty big part of her kit. This will pretty much go off whenever sound is detected inside of this blue zone right here. So if you put it down and somebody makes noise inside of this blue zone, then the sensor will go off and it will stun anybody inside of this zone. It will not activate off of yourself or teammates. However, if an enemy sets it off and you are inside of this zone or your teammates are inside of this zone, it stuns anybody inside regardless of if they are on the enemy team or on your team. So yeah, you basically put it down like that. You can also pick it up again. And sound can either be gunshots or footsteps, or even somebody planting or defusing the spike counts as noise, and that will set off the sonic sensor. This is actually invisible to enemies unless they get really close to it. Very similar to a Cypher trip. If the enemies get close enough to it, it will show up and make noise. However, if they are a certain distance away, they don't actually see these sound sensors. Next up is the Grab Net. This is Deadlock's signature ability, which means that you get it for free every single round. There's 2 ways that you can throw this, just like a KO flash. Left click is going to be the long range throw, just like that. And then a right click is going to be an underhand throw, just like that, which goes a shorter distance. So anybody that's caught inside of this grab net basically just gets force crouched. So as you can see, if I hit myself with it, it crouches you down and it forces you crouched, and you have to hold F in order to take off the net and be able to stand up again. It does make a sound cue, a pretty loud sound cue. If somebody is taking off your net, you will hear that sound cue. So yeah, that's basically all it does, is creates this little radius right here, and anybody inside of it is going to get crouched. Next up is Deadlock's ult, which is called Annihilation. I actually didn't know that was the official name for it. But you basically just shoot out a cocoon. This is actually like the part of Deadlock's kit that a lot of people get confused about. Basically what happens is you equip sort of like an ability that you can shoot, kind of like a raise rocket, and you can shoot it anywhere. So if I shoot it right here, you can see it creates this sphere, and anybody inside of that sphere will get cocooned. They'll get cocooned, and then they'll get reeled into the cocoon. And once they reach the end of the cocoon where you shot the ult, they eventually die. And they can be shot out by their teammates. If their teammates shoot at the cocoon has a certain amount of HP. I believe it's 600 HP on the cocoon. And if the enemies shoot the cocoon enough, then it will break out the enemy player. So one thing that some people get confused about is Deadlock's ult, you can actually bounce off of walls. So for example, if I shot it at this wall right here, you can see that it actually bounces off. So yeah, you can bounce the ult off walls, which means that you can hit some places that normally you wouldn't be able to hit. So that means that you can shoot it at places where normally you wouldn't be able to reach. Okay, so that's basically all of Deadlock's abilities explained. Now let's go over how to play her the most effectively. Let's start with defense, because that is where Deadlock is the most effective, and you can really utilize her entire kit. So with Deadlock's kit, the main thing that you want to use her kit for is to slow down pushes, and also use her sound sensors to help you get kills. Unlike a traditional Sentinel where you can use their tripwires for locking down a specific part of the map and getting information, you really can't do that with deadlock sensors. For example, like if you're playing Cypher, you could put a trip going across here in hookah, and you don't have to worry about hookah anymore. You can just hold long, right? So that's something that you can do on a traditional Sentinel, is you can put a trip somewhere and then completely ignore that area. Whereas with Deadlock, you can't really do that with her sound sensors because the enemies can just crouch or shift walk past it. So if I put a sound sensor down right here, like this, I can't really rely on this sound sensor to get me information because the enemies can just walk past it and it won't set off the sound sensor if they're not making any noise, right? So you can't really use deadlock sensors for information, and that's the same concept of playing deadlock on attack. You don't really want to use deadlock trips to hold flank because they're basically useless if you're using them to hold flank. And we'll go over that a little bit more when I go over to attack side deadlock, but starting with defense, you want to really use her trips to help you get kills. What that means is putting your trips in areas where enemies are forced to make noise. A really, really strong trip on Deadlock on this map is this one right here under hookah. You literally just place a trip right here under hookah. And the reason why this trip is so powerful is because if they are executing B, they're pretty much forced to jump out of hookah and make noise. There is a way to silent drop out of hookah on this box, but nobody is going to be doing that if they are executing B. The only reason they would be doing that is to lurk, right? So this sound sensor right here is super strong because anybody jumping out of hookah, whether they're jumping on the box like this or they're jumping down just like normally, this trip is going to go off and it's very, very hard for them to do a 180 and break it in time. So you can play off of this trip. Let's say you're playing in tube, you wait for your trip to go off, swing off of it, and then you can basically get a free kill on a concussed player here. And that's basically how you want to utilize deadlock trips, is to help you get concussed kills. Another one is like either one right here off this wall or off of this hut right here. Both of these trips are great. You can play again in tube. Sorry, my internet's like really bad these past couple weeks. But yeah, you can play tube off of these two trips, and then if anybody sets it off, you can swing out and get free kills on concussed players. So that's basically the way you want to use deadlock trips. Not so much for information, but more so to help you secure kills. Now with Deadlock's wall and grabnet, these are both delay utilities. So one thing Deadlock is super good at is delaying any hits onto her site, because her wall and her grabnet are super annoying to deal with, and they can buy a lot of time for your teammates to rotate to your site to help you out. One thing you want to keep in mind with your wall is not to waste it. So for example, some players will throw their deadlock wall right here on this choke point off rip.
Barrier deployed.
And this is pretty much a waste of deadlock wall, because if you're throwing it off rip, first of all, you're not throwing it off of any information. So after 30 seconds into the round, this wall is just going to disappear. So if the enemy's defaulting, this wall is basically useless. Another thing is, even if they are rushing, this wall is super easy to break without any sort of punishment. So they can literally just walk up here and shoot this wall for free. And there's no way that you as a deadlock would be able to punish this guy shooting this. So when you're placing your wall, you want to make sure that you're making sure that the points are somewhere where you can punish. So if I was walling hookah, I would want to do something like this where I'm walling deeper. So instead of walling all the way back there, I'd want to wall somewhere like here. And the reason why I want to wall this is because now, in order to break this wall, the enemy has to peek out and have a line of sight on this orb in order to break it. And you can be playing top sight, punishing this angle, right? So the fact that they have to peek out to break your wall means that you can use this wall to kind of bait them in and get kills off of your wall. Same concept applies for long. You don't want to be throwing your wall super deep like this, right? Because now they can just walk up to here and shoot your wall without any sort of punishment from your side. So that's basically how you want to think of deadlock wall. You want to throw it somewhere where it's harder for them to break it without punishment. Next, let's talk about the net. The net is really, really strong, especially if you're pairing it with the right util or you're just using it at a really good time. So the net is good for comboing with different abilities like raise grenades. You can combo it through this TP. You can throw a net people in hookah, get your raise to throw a nade through, combo it like that, or you can just use your net to stall, which is really, really strong. Especially in these choke point areas, if somebody's rushing your site, a really well-timed net into this general area pretty much will sit all of these players, and it delays their rush by like 4 or 5 seconds. So a really well-timed net can pretty much shut down a rush, and it messes up a lot of timings. For example, if they are doing a typical B hit where let's say they have 2 hookah, 3 long, right? If you throw a net at these long players and you time it well to where they're just about to come out and the hookah guys are coming out as well, you can pretty much isolate fights. So you have, 3 long guys sat and they have to take off that net. And now let's say the hookah guys are coming through. You've pretty much isolated fights on the hookah guys jumping out, whereas the long guys are super delayed. So that's why timing a net super well is really, really strong. But I think the best part about the net is that it pairs really well with Deadlock's ultimate. They're pretty much meant to be used together where you net somebody and then you can pretty much get confirmation that you've netted somebody with the sound cue. Like I mentioned earlier when we were going over Deadlock's abilities, whenever you take off Deadlock's net, it makes a super loud sound cue, which means that you can pretty much use that sound cue to know where and when to shoot your ult. So let's say, for example, I throw a net long, just like this, and I hear somebody taking off my net in this corner. I can then pop my ult and just shoot my ult there, and it's pretty much a guaranteed hit onto that player. So your net is really, really good for securing an ult hit. And that's another way you can use your net is paired with your ultimate, and that pretty much guarantees a hit every single time. Deadlock's ult can be a little bit weird with the bouncing and the trajectories, so if you want to practice, just load up into a custom game and practice bouncing your ult off of these walls and then seeing where it hits. So just getting comfortable with that also will help you hit your Deadlock ults. Okay, so that's pretty much defense. Let's move on now to attack. Like I mentioned earlier, when you are attacking, you pretty much don't want to use Deadlock's sensors to trip flank because that's not really going to do anything for you. You're pretty much just wasting your sensors. Like if I put a sensor here to watch the B flank and somebody's actually flanking, they're most likely going to be walking this entire way, and then they're just going to hear your sensor once they get close enough, and they're just going to walk past it. So there's really no point using your sensors to watch flank because it's not going to do anything. Deadlock is more of an aggressive sentinel on attack side, so you want to use your sensors aggressively. You can put them on spike, for example. That's a really strong way to use your sensors. If you're planting default here, for example, I would put a sensor here, and then anybody walking into this zone to defuse the spike will set off this sensor, and you can peek off that sensor. You can also use your sensor for more aggressive angles. For example, you can use it right here in U-Haul. So you could put a sensor here, for example, and then you can play like this, waiting to swing off of your sensor. So once someone gets into U-Haul and they're pushing up, the sensor is going to go off, and you can swing off of that. Oh, I just killed myself. You can swing off of that sensor. And yeah, you want to really think about using your sensors like that. Your wall, you can pretty much just use to delay the retake. And so if we're taking the site, I would just throw my wall on one of these choke points to delay their retake. You can either throw it heaven like that, right? Block off that heaven flood, or you can throw it spawn. Oh my god, this lag. Or you can throw it spawn like that to block off the spawn push. You can also save your wall too. For late round, let's say we get the spike down, you can save your wall and then throw it off the timing onto default like that, which makes it so that they have to break this in order to get to the spike. So a lot of different ways to use your wall on Deadlock, but its main use on attack is to stall the retake and cut off the choke points for the flood. Your net as well, same thing as defense, just get creative with it. You can pair it with utility from your teammates. For example, you could pair with a raise nade. Let's say we know somebody is over there. Back triple. You can pair this Deadlock net right here with a well-placed raise nade, and that's super strong. You can also save it for post plant, which is really strong as well. So just sit here, wait for the tap, and then you can throw a net like this. And then you can swing off of the net as well, off the sound cue of them taking it off. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to use your net. And just like defense, you can again use your net paired with your ultimate. So if it's a 1v1, for example, and you want to guarantee that you're going to hit this ult, wait for the tap, throw your net, wait for the sound cue of them taking off your net, and it's pretty much a guaranteed ult hit. So that's basically how you want to play Deadlock on attack. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. That's how to play Deadlock, some basic tips and tricks to playing Deadlock. I think Deadlock is a super fun agent, especially on the right map. And yeah, hopefully this helps you guys out and makes you, I don't know, maybe see Deadlock in a different light and want to play her. But that's pretty much it. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.